Okay, maybe let's start because it's already 3:33, almost 3:34. If you're ready, let's start. My name is Chiu Cheng. I'm the Infrastructure and Development Director of APAN. I'm in charge of the internal infrastructure as well as the external training and development for APAN. And in fact, for our development team, we have more than 20 people in the team, not just the trainers, but also people who help with the coordination and also helping with keeping the platform running. I'm talking about the academy platform and also, of course, the content development and curriculum, etc., etc. So we do have a big team to help do the capacity building for the region. And as for myself, I actually joined APAN 6 years ago. And before I joined APAN, in fact, I was with the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I was in charge of the IT infrastructure for the university, including the campus network, including the data center, system team, etc., etc. I was also involved in doing the Hong Kong Internet Exchange, HKIX. And so that's why I have a bit of knowledge about running an IXP. So that's why I can help cover this topic. And this is agenda for today. And I would cover not just some background information, but also about some implementation steps, the design, etc. And other important part would be the models, operation model for the IX, and also what APAN can help with doing the IXP development work. But I have to say I'm not a hands-on engineer, more a manager. So what I can cover would be the high-level stuff, and there's no hands-on part for this tutorial. If you are interested in the hands-on part, we can arrange another training for you, especially when you are in the process of setting up the IX. Then we can, of course, do not just the training, but also technical assistance. We even can help provide equipment if needed, of course, on a case-by-case cases, because we can support not for profit sale, but of course we wouldn't help the commercial IXP to sell that network because it's for business. But I have to say, there are no one single recipe for setting up an IX or running an IX. There's no one size fits all. And I can only provide you hints, but not answers. And there are actually many different scenarios for running the IX. I can only cover a few. And I hope we can make it a more interactive section because I think I'm sure, especially for those who are interested in setting up an IX, you probably will have a lot of questions, which I cannot cover here, but I may be able to provide you some hints. Anyway, so you all know how internet operates, so I won't cover it. But for each network on internet, there's a number associated with that. That's AS number, autonomous system number. It's unique around the world. And of course, APAN is in charge of assigning AS number to all the networks. And so different networks running different AS number will use a protocol called BGP for exchanging routing information so that they can do interconnection. And also with that, you can do multi-homing. You can connect to different networks for transit purpose or for peering purpose. I'll talk more about that. And of course, you also need portable IP addresses. because like if you get your IP addresses from your ISP, you may not use it. You may not be able to use it for other interconnection purposes because your ISP may not allow you to do so. But like if you want to have more independent routing, you should get your portable IP addresses. Of course, APAN is in charge of that, assigning the IP addresses. And so normally, if you connect to internet, you actually buy transit service from your service providers. So you are their downstream customers, and of course, your ISP is your upstream. Sometimes we call it transit provider, sometimes we call it internet gateway. Is actually roughly the same. The key point is they provide you the connectivity to the whole internet. And of course, assuming you will use BGP protocol to exchange routing information, you actually would use the protocol to announce what networks you are carrying, and then you get from your service providers, your transit providers, the routing table of the whole internet. And of course, you need to pay to get the transit. And then so you may connect to more than one transit providers in order to improve your resilience. But then, of course, since you need to pay, you probably would pay a lot, especially if you are not if you want to connect to your certain networks, but your ISP cannot get to you, get connectivity to you that with very high performance, that you may consider to do direct interconnection with those networks. And that, in fact, we can call it like direct peering. And with that, you may be able to get better connectivity with lower cost and high performance. And like the peering model that people usually would do would be like having a direct connections between the two networks. They are peers, and they actually would not help each other to get to the whole internet. In fact, they use that peering connection to connect to the other network only, and their downstream networks, downstream customers only, but not upstream, not the whole internet. So people actually would have direct connection through maybe direct circuit, or they may do the peering over the IX internet exchanges. And interconnection can happen with any of the networks, ISPs, data centers, content providers, like cloud providers, etc., etc. Even universities, individual universities can be a very independent network. And this is for mutual benefit, and especially for high performance, lower latency, lower cost. And for this kind of peering relationship, usually there wouldn't be any settlement between the peers. You don't need to pay for the connection. And the cost for the circuit is usually shared. Like if you set up a circuit, maybe each party would pay half of the circuit. Or if you have two circuits for resilience, one would pay for one circuit, the other would pay for the other circuit. And if you do a lot of this kind of direct peering with the local networks, then you can help keep the local traffic local. And that's very, very good because usually local circuit would be cheap. And then you can just rely on your service provider, transit provider, to get to overseas, and all your local connectivity can rely on this kind of direct peering, or maybe over the IX. If the peering is just between two parties, we call it bilateral peering. The short form would be BLPA, bilateral peering agreement. And if the peering is with multiple networks, more than two networks, we call it multilateral peering. I'll talk more about that, about how to achieve multilateral peering. If it's like over a private circuit between two parties. We call it private peering. Is a form of bilateral peering over point-to-point circuit. It can be cross-connect within the same data center. It can be a local loop across your two different data centers. If it's across two different countries, of course, it's IPL, International Private Lease Line. And cost is usually shared between the two peers. And if you want resilience, you can have multiple connections. And but the point is, you can use that circuit only for communications with your particular peer. You cannot use that circuit to communicate with other networks. So it's not very cost effective, especially if you like buy a very high speed circuit, but the usage is low, then of course it's not very cost effective. But of course, if the traffic volume is high, then it's cost effective. And it's not very scalable. Like if you have 10 networks doing full interconnection, you need 45 circuits to achieve like full interconnections among the 10 networks. And you know, I won't go through it, but like you also need router ports, a lot of router ports in order to achieve that. Of course, that's not quite cost effective as well. And that's why you know, we would like to use a concept called internet exchange point or internet exchange. I usually call it IX because it's easier to pronounce. If you say IXP, sometimes people will think, oh, are you talking about ISP? Yeah, so let's use IX to refer to IXP. It's a physical network, you know, which multiple networks can connect and then do easy peering among one another. And I'll talk more about that. And with that, in fact, you can do this kind of like bilateral peering over multiple networks very, very easily. This is, you know, the simplest IX topology. You can just use one IX switch, and then all the participating networks would use their router to connect to the same switch. And with that, of course, you just finish the physical connections. You need to set up like BGP connections so that you can exchange routing information. And like with 4 networks like this, you only need like 1 connection, and then you set up 3 BGP, and then if everyone does the same, then of course you can achieve full like interconnection. And you may want resilience, so you may add 1 more switch. In that case, of course, there are multiple options. Maybe you put the 2 switches in the same data center, then you only can achieve the switch resilience. But if you put the 2 switches in different data centers, then you can have site resilience as well. And with this kind of topology, you allow people to have options. If they need resilience, of course, they need to set up 2 connections to both the switches. But if they want to save costs, they may just connect to 1 switch. It's up to them. But anyway, you know, it can provide the resilience people may need. And so, you know, I usually show this comparing with, okay, full connectivity, full interconnection among like maybe different networks, and comparing the number of router ports, comparing the number of like circuits needed. Might be the sweet spot would be if you have 5 networks or above, then maybe setting up IX would be meaningful. If you only need to connect 3 networks together, 4 networks together, probably you don't need an IX. But if you reach like 5 networks or even more, then it's meaningful to have an IX, because you can save number of router ports, you can save number of like circuits as well. And the benefits of IX is to keep local traffic local. Of course, I'm talking about like using IX to connect all the local networks, and it would help like applications, they need low latency you in order to perform well. And with that, in fact, if you can achieve this kind of like good local interconnection, then you may encourage people to develop more local content, develop more local applications, because local communications is fast. And in turn, it actually would help local data center business or even other business to do better, because people are more willing to invest into the local applications. So everyone is benefited. But of course, different networks will have different gain. At the end of the day, I think the most important point is the community is benefited. And sometimes, like if for certain economies, countries, if the government want to do more regulation, they may classify IX as critical internet infrastructure. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. Meaning that, like, if IX is classified as critical internet infrastructure, you may be able to get more funding, but at the same time, you may have more regulation, meaning that you need to meet certain requirements. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And the value and attractiveness of an IX is proportional to the number of networks connected, and also, of course, the amount of traffic volume. If you start the IX, it's actually very, very difficult to get others to connect. People actually tend to take a wait and see approach. Maybe now you have like 3 networks connected. Maybe I'll wait until maybe 6 networks connected. I'll connect to you. But like who will be the number 4, number 3? It's very, very difficult. But okay, after you have reached the certain number, then people will come automatically. It's a snowball effect if you reach the critical mass. So the initial period is usually the hardest. But anyway, after you gain the critical mass, the snowball effects come, and yeah, it's actually getting easier and easier. And also, gradually, you can get a good mix of traffic as well, a good mix of networks, because like if you get enough eyeballs, then you can get more content to connect to you. If you get more content to connect to you, of course, you can get more eyeballs to connect to you. So it's a good snowball effect, very good. But the initial part would be very, very difficult. Talk about implementation steps. In fact, IX is a layer 2 network. It's very simple. It's just either, I was involved in, of course, setting up HKIX back in 1995. Initially, we just used coaxial cable to connect to the routers, and thin coaxial, not thin. So the investment was very, very low. But anyway, gradually, soon after, we changed to use switch for that purpose. And it's very, very attractive to like participants, especially if you have a lot of networks connected already, because people can use just one physical network to interconnect to many, many networks. But like, please keep that in mind. For this kind of network, it's a layer 2 network, one broadcast domain, and you should only allow routers to connect to the network. You should not allow other kinds of equipment like servers to connect to it, unless the servers are managed by you. And then, because it's a layer 2 network, all the participants can do bilateral peering over the layer 2 infrastructure anytime. But in order to help people to do easier interconnection, a lot of IX will set up route server, and in fact, it's a simple router or maybe a server running the route server software, so that people can just set up one BGP session with the route server, and then they can get everyone does the same, and then people can exchange routing information through the route server. The traffic exchange would not be going through the route server, by the way. It will go straight through the switch instead of going through the route server. The route server does not need to be very, very high performance. It's just maybe a simple server. But one note I want to make is like some service providers will call their IX layer 3 service IX. To us, it's not an IX, it's more transit provider. By the way, you know, if you buy service from others and they say it's an IX, please ask them whether it's layer 2 or layer 3 service. If it's layer 3 service, it's not IX. And of course, you know, a lot of data centers in fact are doing IX as well, because they are facilitating interconnection. IXP development, in fact, is an evolution, step by step. You can set something simple, and then you can do improvement over time. But I would say, you know, even at the beginning, you should pick the right initial organization governance model and choose the neutral side as a start, so that I think, especially if you choose to set a not-for-profit one, it's very, very important for future success. And in fact, like, you know, of course, you know, when I help with doing the HKIX, our target was to position it as a local IX, but gradually it became regional IX, because there are more and more overseas providers are connecting to it. By the way, it's an evolution, as I mentioned, depending on, of course, your positioning, as well as, of course, the telecom regulatory environment in your country economy. As I mentioned, you know, you can start with very, very small, simple topology, and then you may even use private IP address to start with, using one simple switch, and then you change to use public IP address later. But please bear in mind, if you need to apply IP address from APAN, you need to be a legal entity. Yeah, that's the thing you need to keep in mind. And of course, you may think about resilience. As I mentioned, you may add one more switch, or even having the switches in different sites. Then, of course, you can gradually add the resilience into the network. And also, if you want to support multilateral peering, you add route server. But with route server, you need to have AS number as well, and you need to apply it from APAN. And with the AS number, you probably can do RPKI, route origin validation. That's of course another stage. And for a lot of people, especially if you are helping to set the only IX or the first IX in the country, you may also put in some very important internet infrastructure, including DNS servers at your exchange, like root server, like TLD server, or even recursive server, like port 1, port 8, or whatever. And a lot of IX also would like to have the content caches at the exchange, so that the value of the exchange can be even larger. So talking about minimum configuration, as I mentioned, HKI started with just a coaxial cable. But of course, these days we don't use coaxial cable, we use Ethernet switch. And so you can start with just one Ethernet switch. But I must stress that you cannot choose a low-end switch. You cannot use the switch that you use at home for that purpose. Because port buffer is a very important part. And I'll talk more about that. But anyway, these days, at least support of 10 gig ports would be minimum. So that's the minimum config. But next step, like if you want to do multi-lecture peering, facilitate multi-lecture peering, you would add route server, and that may run BERT software. But as I mentioned, that server may do not need to do traffic exchange, so you don't need very fast server. And then you probably want to do like better management. We highly recommend you to use IXP Manager for the management. It's an open source software with APAN support. And in fact, if you are short on like funding, you actually can use like one SPICO server with VM hypervisor to run multiple software on the same server. So these are kind of minimums, but the minimum would be the single network switch. That's the minimum, because if you just facilitate people to do bilateral peering, you don't want to be involved in like any of the routing. You just provide the layer 2 network and let them do the BGP. Yeah, that's the minimum that you can do. Yeah, as I mentioned, resilience, and then route server. And of course, you also might want to have multiple route server for resilience purpose as well. These are, just examples. And also, if you want to, since you are helping with the routing, in fact, we will recommend you to do route origin validation, to filter invalid routes. The key point is, if you are a transit provider, you probably would be more cautious. Okay, whether I should do route origin validation, because you actually will filter the routes people may need. But if you're running an IX, the route server will not carry full routes anyway. So if you lose the invalid routes, people will not blame you anyway. So yeah, we highly recommend people running route server to run route origin validation together. So that's our recommendation. So these are the implementation steps. You can go step by step, start from simple, and add more like resilience and other services onto it later. Or you can, of course, start more. You'll start with a bigger configuration. It's up to you. And so if you come to a stage to apply for a public IP addresses, right now, under the current policy, you can get up to /24. So you need /24 for IPv6/48. In fact, you just need /64 for the IPv6. And then one AS number for the route server if you facilitate your multi-lecture peering. But don't forget, in fact, you may need another network to provide transit. Especially if you want to do firstly, remote network management. Of course, you need a simple transit network. And if you want to support DNS anycast server like root server, like resolving server, then of course you need to provide them the admin network. And also CDN also needs a transit network. But usually the network would be small. Like for anycast, you probably would know DNS now runs a lot on anycast, meaning that they have multiple servers running the same IP addresses all around the world. It will rely on the routing to help you to choose the closest server. But behind the scene, they need another interface. That each server needs another interface for admin purpose. And admin interface, of course, need transit bandwidth, transit network to support.
But usually the bandwidth needed would be very small. So in order to support this kind of service, it's relatively easy. But if you need to support CDN cache servers, the bandwidth needed would be high. Even though, of course, you need the cache server to help you to achieve like bandwidth efficiency. Maybe if you don't have the cache server, you need like 10 gigabit, but with cache server you may need just like 2 gigabit or 1 gigabit, depending on people whether people actually read the same content, or not. Anyway, so for that, in a lot of cases, like for IX, if you support like DNS any cache server, you may not charge for the bandwidth. But if you like support CDN cache servers, then you may think about charging for the bandwidth needed. But anyway, I'll talk more about that. But this is the part that people may struggle because how to do it fairly. You probably would need to do usage charging. But if you do usage charging, then of course, it's not simple. Scalability resilience. One point I want to highlight is IX are, because they are considered critical. They are supposed to have no packet loss, and low latency and good resilience too. So it's not simple, and that's why I highly recommend you must not use low-end switch for that purpose, especially the buffer size issue that you may face if with the low-end switch. And also, especially if you go beyond one switch, then the inter-switch length would be the possible bottleneck. It will become very serious if you don't do good capacity planning for properly. And so when you grow to multiple switches, you may need to do oversubscription. If you do oversubscription, then you may have a risk to have packet loss. Of course, that's not good. And also, you don't want to have single point of failure. That, of course, is also another big issue. So when you grow, so this is the topology that people, the last IX would use is the spine and leaf architecture to go beyond 2 switches. You actually would have like the leaf switches to serve your participants and to have the spine switches to be the backplane of your whole system. And so there, of course, have to be multiple spine switches, and all your leaf switches would need to connect to all the spine switches in order to achieve resilience, and also, of course, bandwidth requirement across different switches. This will allow you to, of course, have better scalability, but you will also get complexity to your network. By the way, this actually applies to very large IX with maybe like 50 connections or even 100 connections. If you only have maybe 20 connections, you may not need this kind of architecture. IX is a layer 2 network. Layer 2 network is actually would have more problems than layer 3 networks because it's a single broadcast domain. You actually it's very difficult to protect your network, and the minimum that you have to do is port security, meaning that you should only allow 1 or 2 MAC addresses. I would recommend 1 MAC address per port, meaning that people can only send traffic with 1 source MAC address. If they send traffic with other MAC address, you should filter the traffic. And you should not, like, when you see traffic from other MAC addresses, you should not do the shutdown. In fact, you just restrict, filter the traffic. Otherwise, you will run into a lot of like operational issue. And you actually would be recommended to do Ethernet type filtering. And also you are recommended to rate limit the broadcast and multicast traffic because the traffic that you usually should support would be unicast traffic only. So this is the thing. In fact, there are a lot of references which kind of like ether type you can you should allow, but not the others. There are a lot of like references on the internet. I won't go through it. And also like IX, as I mentioned, is a layer 2 network. Proxy up is a very, very serious issue. It's also not easy to tackle. And when like especially when new participant join, you need to do proper testing before you allow them to join. Usually there would be a separate network. You need to do a lot of testing, make sure that they have the proxy up disabled before you move them to the post-production network. That's the step you have to do. And also, of course, there may be cases that people have done like some human error, and then they enable proxy up accidentally. Then, of course, if you encounter, you need to like shut down the port immediately. But it will cause interruption to your network for sure. That's not good. And that's why people are starting to use eVPN over VXLAN to help with that. But of course, it's even more advanced technology. Unless you are very big, you may not need that. And another common issue that IX would encounter would be the unknown unicast flooding. This would happen when there's asymmetric routing happen. Meaning that one network or one router may not send any traffic. So the switch may forget about the MAC address that they carry. And whenever people sending traffic to that unicast MAC address, since they don't know where they are, they would just broadcast the unicast traffic to all the ports. And they will keep on and on until that router responds. But since that router has asymmetric routing, the traffic will actually go through the other path. And so it will become very, very serious. But anyway, that is one way to actually tackle it, is you can actually do frequent, regular app check, so that the MAC address from that router would be known to the switches, so that it will solve the issue. But of course, natively eVPN VXLAN can help with that as well. The third issue that I actually mentioned already is if you use low-end switch, they usually would have a shared buffer among multiple ports. And in fact, in the past, we did encounter if one some of your participants may not upgrade their ports fast enough, and so they might have congestion, or maybe they are under DDoS attack, so the port would be full. But if their port is full, if your switch has shared buffer among multiple ports, that would cause issue to the other ports sharing the same buffer. It happened if you choose the wrong switch. So it's very, very important you choose the right switch with no share buffer. So that's why I recommend you don't use low-end switch as the beginning. Anyway, talk about operations. Highly recommend you to use IXP Manager. As I mentioned, APAN or APAN Foundation, in fact, is funding the development. It's an open source software, and is actually developed by and maintained by the IX in Ireland. And because they are operating IX as well, so they have high incentive to keep the software current. And the same system can help you to do provisioning, monitoring, manage the switches, even manage the patch panel, whatever. And a route server, they can help you update peering DB, IXP DB, IRDB. They can help you with RPKI manners and many others. So yeah, please take a look at the link over here. Yeah, it's very useful. Highly recommend to use it as from the beginning. One interesting things I want to share with you is I actually I love to watch the MRTG graph. You actually would provide the traffic data on maybe your website so as to show to people that how much traffic you are carrying. But there are a lot of insights that you can see from the graph. Let's say, for example, you actually would add all the incoming traffic from all the ports together to have an aggregate number, and then another one for the outgoing. And supposedly, incoming should be the same as outgoing. Traffic will go in and then go out, right? But if the incoming is larger than outgoing, that would mean there's congestion in one of the ports at the very least. There may be a DDoS attack. So when you see that, you probably would go to see the traffic of the ports, and then you certainly can find, okay, yeah, there would be congestion in one or more ports. In that case, I would recommend you to talk to the participant to look at that, if whether it's normal. But in a lot of cases, if it's not DDoS, then that would mean they need to upgrade the port. They need to add more connections. Otherwise, it will cause issue to others, sooner or later. Another observation that I had before, and that's kind of proven already, is if you have total outgoing traffic larger than total incoming traffic, then you have unknown unicast per day. Then you need to do something about it. And if you see sudden drop of large traffic volume, highly likely there's post-CR problem. And of course, you need to do things immediately as well. Usually it happens when people change router software, router config. So yeah, just by looking at MRTG traffic volume, you actually can have some insight as to what's happening. Another thing I want to highlight is the IP address space that you use for your peering LAN, the IX LAN, should not appear on global routing table. It actually helps protect the peering network, because people cannot DDoS the port, the router port on the LAN, peering LAN that easily. But sometimes your participant would announce your your network out with their AS number. In that case, you need to ask them to stop doing it. And of course, you need to monitor it closely. Another thing is you probably would announce it by yourself using your route server, but tag it with no export, so that people would not export it further. So that helps a bit. So that's the way that we will usually do. But this is the recommendation. Don't put the routing, don't put the peering LAN IP address onto the global routing table. That's one thing. It's not directly related to IX operator, but I want to share with you my my observation. Commercial providers actually care more about transit and peering. They have clear delineation between transit connections and peering connections. They won't mix them together. So this connection is about transit, this connection is for peering. They won't mix things together. And they would do a lot of direct peerings, maybe perfect peering, maybe over the IX. And those peering connections would be a more preferred path, or most preferred path. Because with that, they can have better control of their traffic, especially the routing. And then the asymmetric routing would be less severe. I noticed that over the NRAN, there are a lot of announcing more than just downstream networks. A lot of transit sharing, transit swapping cases, but that would create a lot of asymmetric routing. It's very difficult to troubleshoot or even solve routing issue. So maybe our network should learn more from the commercial network. That's the thing I want to share. Another thing I want to share is about multilateral peering. Of course, it's very convenient because you just have one BGP, and then you can get a lot of routes from other networks from the same IX. But it also means you have less control of your routing because it's indirect. It's through the route server, and the route server is operated by the IX. So people actually, especially commercial networks, they prefer to do bilateral peering more because they have better control of the routing. So my recommendation is do not blindly, and also I think you may be able to get more routes from your bilateral peering peers. Because some commercial network, in fact, they may not announce all their routes to the route server, but they may announce all their routes to their direct peer. So this is the thing that you may consider as a network operator. And also do not blindly prefer all the routes learned from the route server with higher local preference, because that may not be good. Do more bilateral peering would be highly recommended. Anyway, I've covered quite a bit. How much time do I have? So I have 30 more minutes at least. I'll talk more about the IXP model. There are, in fact, multiple models that you can consider, but as I mentioned, I can only give you some hints. But the most important part is neutrality. I think neutrality would be very important, especially for the non-profit setup. Commercial setup, of course, because they invest their own money and they charge for the service. So yeah, they are free to do anything, because if they suffer, it's their own fault. And they may not care about the neutrality. It's fine, but not for profit setup. Tend to be more cautious because neutrality would affect them a lot. So they tend to be more independent from individual participants and tend to offer fewer services, because if they want to offer more services, there's high chance that they would compete with their participants. Of course, the IX in developed countries' economies would be very different than the IX in the developing economies. IX in developed economies are mostly business, even for not-for-profit setup. HX is one typical case. In fact, I think one of my former colleagues is online. But anyway, it's still a business because they need to survive. if they cannot like run it efficiently, then they cannot survive. That's very simple. And also usually IX would not have a lot of government involvement in developed countries' economies. And there would be multiple IX in those developed economies, many, like in Hong Kong, like Singapore, like Japan, even like Korea. So there would be keen competition. But like if people cannot do keep intra-economy traffic local, yeah, someone needs to step up. Maybe government needs to step up, maybe industry group needs to step up, maybe customer need to apply pressure. But I'm glad that at least I think with HIX and other IXs in Hong Kong, we can proudly say more than 99% of the intra-Hong Kong traffic stay within Hong Kong. In fact, like, in the past, I'm not too sure about the current case, but in the past, like even like Taiwan to Taiwan traffic, Philippines to Philippines traffic would go through Hong Kong. So yeah, because Hong Kong positions himself as a regional hub. So it actually can help a bit, to keep intra-Asia traffic within Asia. But you may ask why Taiwan or like Philippines cannot keep their traffic local. Yeah, because they don't collaborate. The service providers do not collaborate. That's the issue. Anyway, interestingly, IX and data centers in developed countries are natural partners. You can see multiple IX in one data center, and you can see same IX in multiple data centers. I think that's healthy competition. Is in fact quite good. I like competition. Competition drives us to become better. But anyway, but at the end of the day, if like intra-country traffic cannot keep within the country, that's not good. Developing economies are very different, I have to say, because some even do not have IX, and local traffic usually does not stay local. There's a lose-lose situation. And in fact, IX can help internet development a lot. As I mentioned, it will help keep the cost for connecting to internet down, and also help the local content development, local application development. So they may need to start with a subsidized model, because it's very hard to start an IX without subsidy. And it may not a business, because they need like the IX to help the internet development, and they may not be able to have a sustainable financial model, and help from government is mostly needed. And active participation of the biggest players will also very important. Governance, well, as APAN, of course, we are the advocates of multi-stakeholder bottom-up approach, and we want the community to participate in the governance of the IX, and membership-based model would be one of the best models, and government support would be important. Government support may not mean government would take the lead, will do everything. They just need to support it, just need to facilitate it, especially during the infancy stage. But afterwards, I think the best approach is still to let the community to lead the governance. And we would recommend to be more inclusive. I'll talk more about that. And fair, consistent, open, and transparent. And membership-based models, like, usually would be, the networks connected can join as members. And sometimes you may allow people to like opt in, meaning that maybe people, if the participant do not want to become a member, is fine. They can just join, but without being a member, because member usually means they would have a vote, they would they would participate in the governance process, etc., etc. That some people may not like, but if it's optional, it's fine. And then people may elect a board to help do the decision on different things, including policies, including financial part, and government, should also participate as a facilitator, etc., etc. That's the model that we think is the best. But as for the location of the IX, we think starting from a neutral location would be a good starting point. Maybe university can play the role, maybe landing station can play a role, technology park can play a role, maybe carrier neutral commercial data center can play a role, even government data center can play a role. But one important part is for these locations, there should be multiple carrier options. People can have choices. They can choose different carriers to lease maybe fibers or like circuit to connect to the exchange from other sites. That would be highly recommend. I just can share with you one thing. Maybe a lot of you actually experienced similar things before. Like APAN has a rack in Japan. It's free of charge, but is inside one of the big carriers in Japan, and we want to do better interconnection. But since we cannot lease fibers from other carriers, and also we cannot connect to the exchanges not run by that carrier, so we cannot do a lot interconnection. That's not good for us. So that's why we want to move away from that. So same for IX. In this case, like better to have like carrier neutral data center with multiple carrier options, and you surely need to maintain neutrality continuously. And also, I think in order to allow people to have more choices, you actually should consider expansion to multiple sites within the same city. Then it can help you to become even more neutral because people have choices. Another thing I would recommend, especially when you start your IX, you need to find a few anchor participants. Like in the case of HKIX, when we started, we used the university to become the anchor participant. And at that time, of course, universities are the biggest internet users. So we could attract people to connect more easily. Nowadays, of course, is more difficult. But still, I think if you can have a few anchor participants, like maybe in your case, if you have the NRAN to set the IX and then have the NRAN behind, then also you ask maybe the government to support you, then the government networks should connect to the IX as well, so that you can use not just the NRANs, but also the government networks to attract people to connect to the exchange. Then I think it would be a good starting point. As I mentioned, because the IX would have no value if there is no participant. And if you have more participants, you have higher value, and then more people will connect to you. So yeah, start with something instead of nothing. Otherwise, you will fail for sure. And especially geography side, I think usually would not expand beyond a metro area, beyond a city, because you don't want to compete with your participant. If you provide like, you know, a connectivity between two bigger cities, then the major ISP would come to you and say, hey, you are competing with me, and I would disconnect from you. If you have your major ISPs disconnected from you, then you have less value. So don't do that. That's not a sensible move. But of course, you can set up multiple networks in different cities. Those networks should be independent. They should not interconnect with one another. Then you can help, you know, the interconnections in other cities as well, not just the biggest city. And of course, as I mentioned, to add value, you add to the domain name server, you add share cache, and but like for share cache, especially, in fact, nowadays the cache CDN caches, they are more willing to do this. Like several years ago, you know, even Facebook did not like this model. But now they like this model more, they support this model. In fact, they push for this model in certain locations. Because, you know, it's harder. They are willing to provide hardware, but they cannot cover the transit bandwidth part. The transit bandwidth part has to be covered by the community, and the community would be represented by the IX. And individual providers, since especially in the developing economy, since they are small, it's very hard for them to provide hardware to a small ISP. If the small ISPs come together and like through the IX, and then they can provide a set of hardware to support multiple ISPs. But of course, in order to, you know, provide fairness, because there's cost involved, so you need to have a charging mechanism to charge the usage, charge the bandwidth cost by usage. It's not easy, but anyway, this is becoming a more popular model for the developing countries' economy. But like that transit network must not be used for other purpose, only for these purposes. Don't provide the transit bandwidth just like transit providers. Don't do that, because you are competing with your participant. It will, you know, affect your neutrality. Financial model, of course, is not easy. Usually may get maybe one-off support from your government or other places, but sooner or later you need to find recurring income for covering your recurring costs. So you need to charge for the service anyway. The usual recommendation is to charge by port. That's, I think, is the easiest, instead of like charging by traffic volume, except for the cache part, the cache usage part. These are the examples. I won't go through it. One point I want to highlight is the technical part. You know, IX engineers are important. And of course, for like large IX, they can afford to hire independent IX engineer. But like if the IX is small, they probably would rely on volunteers mainly. So treat your like engineers well, and in order, of course, to stay neutral, I think even if you rely on volunteers, you need to have multiple engineers from multiple companies, so that you can maintain neutral, and also you can have resilience. And also maybe help from the universities should be considered. yeah, maybe, you know, the like computer center engineer can help with that. That's one possibility. But don't forget, you know, you may need license to operate an IX. So check with your regulator before you go ahead to do anything. Otherwise, you will be arrested for running an unlicensed network. And also whether you need a legal entity. But of course, like in the case of NRAN, you may use your NRAN as the legal entity to run the IX. And my understanding, of course, it depends. Like NRAN or universities are relatively neutral comparing with commercial entities. So you can take advantage of that. In fact, as I mentioned, HIX also, you know, started by university. So we took advantage of the neutrality, and we have the trust from the community. By the way, so if you like have a different setup, maybe membership-based organization, then you probably would need to set up another legal entity. And with that, of course, you can apply for license, you can set up agreements with participants, and also you can use that to apply for APAN membership. Yeah, government funding, I think is, you know, important to have government to support you, and government tends to provide one-off support. They cannot provide you continuous support, and let's take it, because that would mean they support you, but you should not rely on the government forever. So you need to find out a long-term sustainability model. One interesting topic is relating to like whether the IX should serve licensed ISP only. Maybe it's a good starting point, but sooner or later you need to open up to all kinds of networks, including CDN, because they may not be licensed ISPs. DNS, you know, they will not have license. And even large enterprise networks, like even like banks, hospitals, they might be, you know, good candidates, and they need good local connectivity. Even overseas network, they may consider to connect to you. Right? And then it can help drive down the pricing of local interconnectivity further. And with proper environment, the local IX may become a regional IX. I probably won't cover this, but anyway, like as I mentioned, IX should not go across multiple city, multiple economies. Yeah, and I think which become more common these days, especially for the IX in the developed economies. They now allow people to connect to the IX remotely using remote layer 2 circuit, etc., etc. Like, for example, APAN. In fact, APAN, before we had a rack in Singapore, we connected to Equinix IX in Singapore remotely. But now we have a rack in Singapore. And we are now connecting to HIX remotely using a layer 2 point-to-point circuit. So it's becoming more and more common. So you may, when you have an IX, you should also allow that. But of course, you need to be mindful about the circuit, whether it's clean enough. Like some providers, when they offer layer 2 circuits, it's not very clean. And they may have like other traffics on the circuit, which will trigger some issue to the IX. Anyway, okay, that's probably, you know, what I want to cover. The last thing I want to mention would be the development work done by APAN. We strongly believe IX can help internet development in the region. And of course, IX actually serve our members, and IX also are our members. So that's why we have high incentive to help IX to develop. And we do training and technical assistance mainly, not just to the IX operators, but also to the IX participants, because these two are different. Like when you have an IX, it doesn't mean the participants, especially in the development economies, they are not used to this kind of like interconnection regime. And so we need to do more training to teach people how to do better peering, how to make the best use of the IXP provider. So this is another part we would do a lot. And of course, the training that we'll do will be very hands-on, not like me doing just talk only, right? And we actually support IXP development in a lot of places, just like the list here. And not just that, we actually on a case-by-case basis would support maybe switches, route server hardware, like IPv6 deployment, IXP manager deployment, and even help with like root server, anycast deployment, white Atlas Anchor, etc., etc. And especially now we have an MOU with ISOC and APIX, APIX Foundation. We together would provide, like ISOC and APIX Foundation would provide the money for the hardware, and then APIX would provide the training and technical assistance, and APIX would help do some coordination. And of course, we highly recommend all the IX to join APIX and Manus as members. And we also support APIX activities, Peering Asia for the peering side, and also some IX would have their regular peering forums like BKNext, like MyIX, and even like MMIX. They, before they had political issue, they also had like MMIX peering forum. And we also would support NOCs as well, because a lot of IX actually support their local NOCs. So yeah, that's the things we do. And we also support the development of PeeringDB, IXPDB, and IXP Manager. Anyway, we think IX will continue to play a role for easier interconnection among networks, especially developing economies. And IX need to find a suitable model for long-term sustainability. We of course can talk more offline regarding what may suit you more, but at least I have provided some hints to you. And want to highlight that neutrality would be very important for non-profit setup. So need to maintain it as much as possible. And I think the key goal is to keep local traffic local. And it will help the internet development in your country economy. That's it. Yeah, I have actually talked a lot. Questions, comments? Yeah.
All right, I think I'm audible. So my question is, like a country like ours, so we do have a monopoly in telecom sector. So I think currently the Sri Lanka Telecom is already configured an IXP. So continue, like all other ISPs are connected to it. But as you said, if somebody is trying to initiate another IXP in Sri Lanka, so what kind of support we are getting from APNIC or ISOC or whatever the places, and how does that particular IXP can get the AS number from APNIC?
AS number IP address part would be the easiest. because, if you have a plan, to do that, yeah, it's easily justified. I think the important part is whether you can get the support from the community. Because, if you don't have the support of the community, including, of course, the service providers, you would not succeed. And so if you can get the support from the community and then demonstrate to us, we can support you with maybe the equipment and things like that. Training and technical assistance is also easy, because we do that a lot anyway. But in terms of like providing financial support, especially for the initial equipment, we need you to show that you have some support from the community. And I think are you talking about Sri Lanka? Okay, Sri Lanka. To be frank, I'm not familiar with the situation here. All I heard was, you have your biggest telco to run the IX. The issue is whether they have the support of all the providers. If they don't, then I think you have very high incentive to find an alternate solution. And I'm talking about having full support, meaning that the other providers are actually routing traffic through the exchange. If, say for example, can I name names? Anyway, for a certain large country, they actually have their regulator force the biggest telcos to interconnect. But they actually just set up a physical connection, but they don't really route traffic through the connections. It doesn't help at all. I'm not too sure about the situation here. If the situation is people are okay, they are routing traffic 100%, you keep your local traffic local, probably you have less incentive to do that. But if it's not the case, I think you have high incentive to find an alternate solution. And APAN will try our best to help you. I think it's the important part is your setup would have the community support, and also you have
so what is IXP and what is happening through the IXP's communities, they have lack of awareness. If we can promote that in a certain way, that I think there would be probability of having another IXPs in Sri Lanka, because it will be not in Sri Lanka, I mean the Asia Pacific region.
Well, we can help do something, especially maybe when you have Alkinoc. Maybe we can use that opportunity to do a talk or a tutorial or anything like that to help people aware whether actually they are really gaining what they are supposed to gain through this kind of IX setup. If they are not, then they should think about alternate solution.
Yeah, in fact, I asked you to present this year as part of this awareness. But at the same time, I think the one that is provided by an ISP here, it is, they claim it's neutral, right? So, and all of us sign, an end-rate is in and all the ISP sign, and routing is happening. All that is how it is, but there's less awareness, and the right place, yeah, NOC is the right place. Maybe we can discuss this further. And as of now, it's run by a few, 2 or 3 enthusiasts who want an IXP to happen. So that's how it's done. So the question is a little, I have actually a question as well, so more than a comment. I see like you had done it in developing countries. The examples you took are most developed, but you also have done it on developing countries. In all those places, was this the first IX to set up, or were there other IX that already there? Bhutan, you took examples. Were there other IX earlier, or was the first?
Bhutan we have.
Yeah,
I think the situation in Bhutan is quite all right. Yeah, because the biggest players are coming together, and they are willing to route traffic over there. And the IX is operated independently, not under any telco. So I think the sub is okay. It's not like the situation that you described for you. So it's much better over there. Yeah, I think maybe BTIX would need maybe another sites in maybe the other cities for backup resilience. Maybe you need that.
Yeah. So when we initially started, also we had some kind of few challenges in order to convince the big operators. They wouldn't want to connect with the smaller operators. So what we did was we built a case with the big operators. We invited them for one-to-one social gathering dinners. Over the dinner, we discussed the advantages, the disadvantages. And because the Druk Research and Education Network is part of the government, so what we did was we also had an opportunity to convince the government that these are the advantages of the IX, and it has something, so the government needs to push it. So we used the government and also pushed it, and we brought in the regulators also to ensure that there won't be any hiccups. And that's how we managed to establish the IX. And also the other thing, what we pursued was we also talked to the CDNs, like Facebook, like Google and everything. And because one of the conditions that when the cash come in to any developing countries, the condition that they put forward is that requirement to share the cash with all the operators locally. So we use that also to also convince the big operators who were hosting those cash to come in and then share it. So that's how we we found some backdoors and then convinced the operators to appear at the common infrastructure. But yes, there were a few challenges like identifying the neutral location. We had to also meet certain demands from the big operators because they wanted in the neutral location, and we said yes. And they wanted a neutral party to operate and manage the IX. We said okay. And now we have an independent board governing the Bhutan Internet Exchange.
Yeah, maybe that's a model to to copy.
The point is, it's very easy there. It's easy there. Easy in Bhutan to do it compared to here.
Well,
but yeah,
another thing is,
yeah,
what does the government think? Do they think there's an issue with that?
As of now, there's less awareness, I would say. Yeah, very less awareness. So we should advocate there. Yeah. So neutral location, what does it mean? How do you set it up? Because we don't have such neutral locations, if I am right.
So we went and talked to a data center, provider, so co-location service provider. So then, no, it's not an ISP. So that's how the ISPs agreed to, co-locate.
We don't have a ISP neutral data center. We don't have.
All the data centers are owned by the ISPs, right?
Okay. Okay.
IXP is an independent body, like a non-profit organization by run a trust body. Then the IXP has its own office, its own data center, or its own POP. Like in Bangladesh, you can find more than one IXP. So there is one run first BDIX. So another couple of IXPs running nowadays. So you can find 2 or 3 rich IXPs in Bangladesh. They are actually set up their POPs, different cities to make it convinced for the local ISPs as well. So this can be happen actually. So I think there will be a neutral location. They should have their own location where ISP will come and connect. I think so.
Regarding location, yeah, okay. Regarding location neutrality, one possible solution is to have your presence, network presence in multiple locations so that people can have choices. It's very hard to find one single location which is totally neutral. But if you can have multiple locations and interconnect all the locations together, then people can have choices. Yeah. But anyway, like in the case of Bangladesh, what I understand is, they have the ISP Association, and they may have another organization which have the support of the ISPs. And so, it's kind of quite natural for those associations to do this because they are actually doing coordination among ISPs anyway. Not too sure whether you have ISP association here. If not, then of course, yeah, you don't have that as an option. I mentioned before, HRX was started by a university, right? The Chinese University of Hong Kong, and university usually was considered more neutral than like commercial providers. That may be a starting point. Yeah. And especially if the cost to you is low, then you can actually do a trial to see what people think. You can start by that. Like at that time, because of course, I actually kind of contradict with what I said, because I think we started with some not so high-end switches. Because, at a university, switches, we have many, many switches. We need to support the whole campus, right? So it's easy to find a spare switch and then start from there. So maybe you can start with a lower cost solution, and then let's see how it goes. I think cache is one important part to attract people to connect. Not too sure the current not so neutral IX has that, and whether it actually support all the participants. If it does not support all the participants, then people may have incentive to find alternate solution.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that the pairing LAN prefix should not be announced to the global routing table.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned that APAN has certain limitations on the allocation of IPv4 address to the IX, maximum of /24, correct?
Actually, /24 is the default. It's not really the maximum, sorry.
All right, /23.
Yeah, but of course, I think /24 is quite large, unless you have more than 200 participants, right? So, yeah, it should be enough for a lot of cases.
Yeah, for the pairing LAN is okay, but to host the infrastructure services like web service, IX website. So for that, if we get to /24, then it would be difficult because we'll have to announce the service prefix to the internet global routing table. So I think because then
I understand what you mean. That's the one solution is you ask someone to support that part with maybe a /28 or a /27, because you don't need a lot of IP addresses for those parts anyway, right? You may not need a totally independent IP address for that purpose. That's the workaround. It's not ideal. That's the workaround.
Like ideal solution would be to get at least /23 from the APAN so that we can have 2/24s broken down.
Yeah, if you are a separate legal entity, I think, yeah, it's doable because right now, yeah, still you can get /23, right? So yeah, if it's justifiable. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, very good to have like a lot of discussions. Anything else? Okay, yeah.
Hello, I'm just a student, and so the problem is too big to me. But I have question is how to be a good IXP engineer, and because just during your speech you say the Philippines and Taiwan's network has some problem, and I'm the victim because when I open my school's VPN and my Google jumped to Hong Kong, so actually, it has at least 1 year make our school's Google Meet, and he will suddenly disconnect. And since I think it is a routing issue. And then my friend points out this issue to school and to my government. He got in trouble because the higher people think he knows too much. So how to solve this problem and make government pay attention to the peering issue, and how to make them know the good IXP engineer is important?
It's a very difficult question. I think Taiwanese government knows about the case. They are trying to find solution, but of course, solution is not easy. And they of course is asking TWNIC to do something, but like TWNIC is struggling to find a better solution. Anyway, it's hard because you know, in Taiwan especially, you know, the market, the ISP market is dominated by Chunghwa Telecom.
Actually, the two ISPs owned by the same company.
Yeah, yeah. So unless this kind of dominance is broken, it's very hard to solve your issue.
So actually, Taiwan's situation is not little ISP can solve this problem. So in my during your speech, I think also what you mean little ISP with community support can make the local peering in the local will solve this problem. But in Taiwan, we only have 5 legal ISP, so this is a big problem, right?
I don't 100% understand the issue, of course, because I don't live there. But like the dominance of Chunghwa Telecom is the main problem, because they have more than 50% of the market share,
Yeah.
or maybe even 70%. And so the other ISPs, you know, they cannot do much.
So
except
actually,
to pay Chunghwa Telecom for connecting to them, because they are the biggest. Of course, you know, you can be very persistent. You can, like, you know, group together the smaller ISPs and then ask them to set up the separate IX and do their, you know, interconnection among themselves through the IX. But still, they need to rely on Chunghwa Telecom for the rest of the traffic.
yeah, yes.
So I think unless the government, you know, break the dominance of that, like what a lot of other governments had done, yeah, it's very hard. It's very hard.
Okay, thank you.
They have to be very brave. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Very good discussion. As I mentioned, I actually cannot give you answers, but I hope I can give you some hints. And for people who needs hands-on training, please come to me and we can discuss about what we can arrange for that. And also, if you need like equipment support, you can also come to me and I can help you see whether it's feasible. That's probably it. Thank you very much.